Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So, James, I'm going to start with the same question as I started last week. Are you older and wiser now?
I'm older. I'm not sure about the wiser piece.
Did you have a nice day, though?
I did, yeah. It was very nice. Yeah, I went out for afternoon tea with my parents. And,
that's very civilised. After you have literally just taken the mickey out of me about art.
That wasn't my 20-year-old son, though. That was me being old and going out with my parents. But
all right,
anyway,
let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on quickly. What have you been up to this week?
It's much of the same, to be honest. Again, still loving it. It's nice and quiet, so heads down, getting a load of work done. I talked to a new client at the start of the week who's doing something really cool with chemistry that is, a bit mind-blowing to me. But I'm sure that's something we'll be talking about on the podcast in due course. And it's a world of pitch decks at the moment. Everyone seems to be redoing pitch decks. So that's been my life this week. And I've been avoiding the heat. I can't be doing with the heat. It's just driving me up the wall. So
But what about the videos? You haven't mentioned the videos.
What videos? Are the ones that I've erased?
Media videos.
The one that I've already erased out of my mind.
Yes. So listeners can now look forward to seeing us more regularly in the flesh, so to speak.
Yeah,
this on camera.
Is Gemma Dorling's idea. She wants much more video content from us. So, well, good luck with that, everyone. I hope you enjoy them. What have you been up to?
Similar to you in terms of the Bradfield, just ticking along, lots of kind of work happening in the quiet period. On the agency side of things, shipped a big piece of work for a client this week, which was good, and won a big new client. So very happy about that. But I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to jinx it.
Okay, don't say anything then, but well done.
We'll talk about that some other time maybe. Caught up with Bridget at Tech East, which was nice. Obviously, last week we gave the shout out to Tim. So good to see Tech East spinning back up and getting back out there. And next week I'm looking forward to a week off. So that's kind of caught me by surprise. So I'm just manically trying to get everything tied up before I go away.
And that means you're leaving me to do the news on my own.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, let's do the news together this week. There's only 3 pieces of news, actually, so it'll be relatively quick. First up, great news for Dr. Oriane Chaussio, who's been awarded the Women in Innovation Award by Innovate UK. You'll remember we had a conversation with Oriane and co-founder Seamus in a previous episode on their company Heartfelt Technologies. So Cambridge University College Hughes Hall has unveiled, they have these special purple plaques that they deliver for the Women in Innovation Awards, and that's gone up at Hughes Hall in her honour. Crikey, there were lots of H's in that sentence.
The next story is from Prospectral, founded by 4 University of Cambridge researchers who have designed a new approach to spectral imaging. They've raised 1.2 million pre-seed from Creator Fund, Unruly Capital and Cambridge Enterprise Ventures. The funding will fuel development of the company's cutting-edge image sensor technology, enabling ultra-compact cameras for material detection and analysis.
And the final piece is actually around, it's not necessarily news, it's more the buzz that's happening around Cambridge Tech Week. I cannot believe how many invites are coming out. Is your inbox full as well?
Yeah, there seems to be loads more of the fringe events this year.
Yeah, fringe events and the main events, they've all been broken down. I think if you remember the Chris Bruce episode, he talked about, half days on different topics. So there's an awful lot of activity for people to sign up to. And next week, we're going to be announcing the details of the live podcast episode that takes place on the Thursday. So watch out for our social media channels for updates on that.
Great. So switching to today's episode, we catch up with COO of Cambridge Cleantech, Sylvie Russell, and we talk to her about all things clean tech and catch up with a couple of the companies in her latest Venture Day event.
Hi, Sylvie. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Faye. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Our veteran listeners, and that's the people that have been listening from the start, not in age, obviously, they will probably remember that we covered last year's or one of the previous Cleantech Venture Days in episode 17. So a lot has changed. Obviously, we've got a lot more listeners since then, and we're going to come on and talk about what's changed for Cambridge Cleantech and the industry overall as well. But let's start at the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about Cambridge Cleantech. How long have you been around? What's your purpose?
Thanks. So Cambridge Cleantech has been created 13 years ago now, so quite a long time, and we've been growing, and not only in Cambridge, but in the UK and abroad. In the last 7 years, we've been running our flagship event, the Cleantech Venture Day, and that's also something that has been growing and is quite exciting, not only for Cambridge Cleantech, but for the whole community.
And how did you find yourself in your current role?
Oh, that's a very easy answer. I just took a coffee with Sam Goodall, and then a few minutes later met Martin Garrett, and that was 5 years ago, and I'm still at Cambridge Cleantech.
Well, thanks for the background on that for the new listeners. So let's bring ourselves up to date. The 2024 Cambridge Cleantech Venture Day was last month. Tell us about the day and how it went and some of the companies that were pitching.
Yes. So the Cleantech Venture Day is something we've been now running for 7 years, and the process improves every time. We are quite keen to listen to feedback. That's this time we had over 120 applications from startups. We were looking for startups in pre-seed, seed, and Series A. The process is then to gather all the applications, having a panel of judges, so 8 of them in general. Some are investors, some are experts in the industry. They mark the applications and then combine all the scores and select the ones to create a day of it. So this year we had 16 companies pitching. We then put an investors-only session, so that could be the day before or on the morning, very early. And that's a good way to have all the investors in a room before the company start. And we always add some expert talk. So it's a day not only for the pitching companies to pitch for investment, but also for the people in the room to learn something about the cleantech sector.
I mean, you mentioned there that it's been going for 7 years, so I guess you've built some good brand equity around the competition. How do you market the competition and where do you see entries coming in from?
So yes, you're right. It's a very competitive market now in terms of pitching. It's the way you build the community around it, and also what we offer is slightly different. So we have all, looking for speakers that are expert in the field, having this investors-only session, changing and adapting, always listening to what the investors and the startup would like to see in the room, and then improving every time.
So you talked about the 100-odd companies that had applied for the competition and they were all prejudged. What's some of the criteria that they were judged on?
They have to fill an application form that we try to keep easy. So there are 5 questions, and one is about, obviously, how long they've been there, what type of investment they're looking for, what the market, the problem they're trying to solve, what's their competitive advantage, and their team. And we looked through that 5 questions quite thoroughly, but it's not a big form because we know they don't have time to go through, a very huge application form. We're not doing a very competitive event. We just want to be able to put in front of investors high quality startups.
And do you want to talk us through a couple of those startups that went through? We've got Sarah here, who we're going to introduce in a moment, and I've caught up separately with Pulpatronics. Are there any that you want to shout out right now?
They were all great, so it would be difficult for me to name all of them. But if you visit the website, you will have the list. What I will say is that this time we've seen more in terms of energy and building tech, rather than, for example, water. The water or circular economy is lower in terms of applications. We also do a large work of reaching out to diverse groups, and I was very happy this time to have 6 women pitching out of 16. So there is a lot of work in the background to be able to attract and be open to everyone.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point in itself, isn't it? That you have to go and hunt as well for, it's not that then that women are not just naturally applying to it, although Sarah will come and find out how you applied in a moment.
I think it's also juggling, is that where do you put your time as a founder of a startup? So, and I'm always admirative of people running their startups, because not only they have to develop their solutions, but they also have to create their team, balance work and family, look for funding. So it's being as approachable as we can be. And so this event is, hopefully, maybe you will confirm or not, Sarah, that it's a friendly, open event.
So let's bring Sarah in now. Thank you for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about Minimass, and then we could ask you some questions about how you applied?
Sure. So I'm Sarah Blake. I'm Commercial Director and Co-Founder of Minimass. Personal background, I originally was a strategy consultant after university. I went to university in Cambridge, hence the link, and I'm happy to be back here. And I also went to university with my co-founder. So that's where we originally met, even though it turned out we grew up on the same road. But we didn't know that until we got to university. But I went to strategy consulting, and I spent 4 years doing that. I realised I really like tangible things. And so I moved increasingly into the world of tangible things, and eventually the most tangible thing of all, which is kind of real estate. And then doing this, which Minimass is basically in the world of construction. So that's pretty damn tangible. And Andy, my co-founder, Andy Coward, he started the business all on his own originally in 2021. And he's a structural engineer by background, so he spent 20 years doing that. So he did civil and structural engineering at Cambridge. And he spent like 7 years at Foster & Partners. He was head of engineering at Bjarke Ingels Group, which is another large international architecture firm, before coming up with his brainwave during the beginning of COVID, and having the time to be able to work on it and set that business up. So he brought me in September last year. So it's been close to a year now, and it's been brilliant just experiencing so different to the world I was in before. So my previous company was British Land, where I was for 11 years. So obviously it was FTSE 100 roughly until I left. It's a completely different world with just the two of us working on Minimass. So I take care of the sales, the marketing, a lot of the fundraising side of things, and Andy does a lot of the product development. We both go in and do the kind of pitching to people. So we've done a lot of pitching over the last 10 months or so.
So let's practice that pitching then. What does Minimass do?
Let's see how I've managed to nail it. So Minimass is a design and engineering solution for large-scale construction. And what we do is vastly reduce the amount of material that's used in structural elements. So we're starting with beams, but it's not just about beams. We will also be moving into other products like frames, which is a combination of columns and beams for industrial sheds, and also floor slabs. So there are various other products in the pipeline. But for the moment, it's beams. And the way that we vastly reduce the amount of material is to 3D print them. So using 3D concrete printing, which is an already existing technology that is mainly being used to print walls of houses, but it's not really the ideal application for it. It means you can very precisely place the material and therefore only put the material where it's needed. So if you took a typical concrete precast beam, it's rectangular in shape simply because that's the simplest formwork for a carpenter to knock up, but actually most of that material is not needed. It's not included in the design calculations, so it's just wasted. So this way you can just put it where you need it, and as a result we can take out about 70% of the concrete and about 45% of the steel. You still put steel reinforcement in because the market likes that. You can do an unreinforced option, but we're kind of waiting until we get industry acceptance with the reinforced version before we push that too far. And then the idea is that you have concrete in compression at the top and steel cable in tension at the bottom. And that way you can separate those two forces and put the right material in the right place for the right purpose.
Good pitch. So as Faye said, why don't you walk us through, the motivation to get involved in the day process of applying, and what you learned as you went through that process.
Absolutely. So I quite quickly came across Cleantech Venture Day and Cambridge Cleantech when I first started last September. I think you guys had just done one around that time, and I saw it on LinkedIn because I started following everything under the sun. And I thought, oh, this looks fantastic, but damn, we've just missed out on applying, so we won't be able to do this year. So I already had it in the back of my mind. And then I went to an event called Access to Finance, which was run in February between Cambridge Cleantech and Oxfordshire Greentech, the sister company. And so I already had kind of met Sylvie and also met Hannah from Oxfordshire Greentech. And so I was kind of in the loop, I would say, at that point. So I was ready to, I was all over it as soon as it came out that it was going to be, the applications were open. And as Sylvie said, it was a really nice, easy application form, which does make a huge difference, because at that point we had gone through hundreds of application forms, and some of them were incredibly time consuming. And by the end of all of this, you kind of work out, I can't be bothered to do those ones. So for the small chance that I might not, get it. But the easy ones, you assess it and go, yeah, that's worth my time and effort. And I knew that this one was worth my time and effort anyway, even if it had been a more complicated form, but that was a nice bonus.
You described that you applied for hundreds of these kinds of competitions. It sounds like that was a very deliberate part of your marketing plan to build awareness and get in front of investors.
Absolutely. Well, when I talk about all the different applications, actually a lot of them were direct to VCs and things like that. And some of those applications were incredibly complicated. But there have been a lot of competitions as well. And absolutely anything that we think is remotely relevant, we will go for. And the more you can spread the message and get in front of investors, even if it's not for that specific raise, even if those investors are for further down the line, it's great to get that awareness of the brand going quite early on. I
think that's good insight, because we talk to a lot of founders, don't we, especially early stage, that haven't yet quite seen the value in entering competitions or even networking to some degree. So I think that's really good to hear that it's been a successful path for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's gives a lot of bang for its buck, because, as I say, you do one application to one VC, in the same amount of time, you could be getting in front of hundreds of investors.
So what was the actual day like? You got there, you obviously had to do your own pitch. What was it like?
Well, I was suffering from an extremely bad cough, you may recall. So I was mainly trying to stifle that during other people's pitches. But no, it was fascinating. I thought the speakers at the beginning were great. So the lady from Bloomberg, she was fantastic, and also the KPMG lady, and yourself. And the guy who came over from Cologne. I thought really great selection of speakers. So that was a definite highlight. And what I like, as you said, you kind of stole my point from earlier, but I like to see so many female founders as well. That was a really nice touch. And I think from our perspective, we're a hardware company, and I read a lot about software companies. We get a lot of feedback like, oh, we're not into hardware because there's too much CapEx requirements, blah, blah, blah. So it was really nice to see at this event that actually I would say hardware was dominating over software, because ultimately you can't decarbonise the planet with software alone.
I did think about asking you that question when you did your pitch for what the company does. So do you go all the way through to actually the manufacturing of the concrete as well?
Yes.
Okay, right.
So not of the concrete. We don't do the materials.
Sorry, the beam.
Yes, we are manufacturing the beams ourselves.
Right, so that's why
initially it costs about £500,000 to buy a 3D concrete printer. So we are not at that stage yet, but we are outsourcing through a partner of ours who a supplier ultimately. But we do plan to actually manufacture ourselves in the UK and Ireland, and then license internationally. So these beams are patented.
Right. Oh, okay.
Key part of the business I forgot to mention.
Oh.
So Sylvie, what was it like hearing from the pitches? Were there similarities, differences, some learnings that people can take away from those pitches?
Yes, there were. And first of all, before they go on stage, we also do a pitch training a few weeks before, and then I meet each company on a one-to-one basis to ensure that we're very strict on the time to pitch. It's only 5 minutes, and it's 5 minutes and no more. So we need to go through the deck together and ensuring that everybody understands the rules. And then it's followed by questions, so 3 questions from panels. And what I like is to be able to to see that they're all trying to sort a problem that we're all facing, and then they all have different solutions. And yes, some of them are deep tech, some are more IT based, and so on. But it's nice to see over the years, because now I've been running the Cleantech Venture Day for 5 years, also you can see trends. So, for example, 5 years ago, it was all about EV and transport, low carbon transport. Mostly the applications were coming from here. Now we can see, it's slightly different. It's much more on energy, building tech, and you can see trends coming. And also a lot of startups applying AI through their solutions. So AI is not their point, is not their solution as such, but it's a tool that helps them to go faster.
And Sarah, what about you? I know that you were there for the seed stage pitches, weren't you? What did you observe?
So I thought, we had there was what they call Danny Robotics, who kind of have recycling pickers that are AI supported. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not exactly an AI expert, so I do sometimes get that question. Can you use AI in yours to improve it? I'm like, no, it's already as good as it can be. But we'll look into it. We'll consider it. So then there was the guy who was kind of changing the compounds in biomaterials. I thought that was really interesting, like how they'd managed to find some method to be able to literally change the molecules within a material in order to make it waterproof so it wouldn't rot and things like that. I thought that was very fascinating. Never heard of that before, and I was a scientist at university, so I get quite geeky about these things sometimes.
And on a slight curveball, you then ran off to an event called Britain's Got Startups. What was that all about?
So this is another event that has been running. I think this is the inaugural year that they've done it, and so far they're just doing it across England. So really, it should have been called England's Got Startups, but they are going to expand to Wales and Scotland next year. And it was just any kind of startup in any sector can apply, and so they again had hundreds of applications, and then they did regional finals and regional events, and the whole idea of it was trying to get investment can be very focused on London, and it was trying to kind of get it into the regions and kind of highlight the talent that's in the regions. And we're not London, we're close to London because we're in Buckinghamshire, but yeah, we're not London as well. So we were in the Southeast Southwest regional final, which was down in Bath, and then managed to get through. Chosen by investors. Basically, the more investor votes you got at that point, then you got to the final, which was held in London. And so it was conveniently on the same day as Cleantech Venture Day, and I thought I loved killing two birds with one stone.
So Sarah, you mentioned a big part of your role is fundraising. Talk to us about the state of the market right now. We have a lot of conversations on the podcast. We see reports coming in on, the fluctuations in the amount of capital being invested. What's your take on that? How have you found the fundraising process? Does it vary by sector? Is the construction industry relatively harder or easier to find funding? What's your thoughts there?
Well, I'm a first-time founder, and so is Andy. And this was our first proper raise. We'd raised just over 200 grand previously through friends and family, but not the same thing. So originally, Andy had started the process by using a company called Sown Capital, who are based in Canada, to support him with the financial model and the pitch deck. And so we already had that pretty well in place, and they had loads of contacts in terms of VCs. So they'd pushed it out to hundreds of mainly in Europe of VCs. So that was a good starting point, and Andy had done some pitches on his own, and that's when he'd got this feedback: you need a co-founder, you need to diversify the skill set. So he'd already had that idea in place, but he was like, come on, come and join me. And then we found, where did we fit? Were we climate tech or clean tech? Were we deep tech because of the engineering aspect? Were we construction tech or prop tech? And so it's trying to work out which one actually suits us best. So we tried all of them. And then it was getting that exact stage, because a lot of different VCs are saying they're early stage, but actually how early stage are they? So, and how low does their ticket size go? And so there's a lot of experimentation, trial and error with trying to nail that down. And there actually aren't that many who go really early stage, because we were in the seed section of Cleantech Venture Day, but some people class us as pre-seed because we hadn't done a pre-seed round before, and because we were aiming to raise 600,000, which isn't a huge figure. So that was a big experimentation. And then there was angels, so trying to work out, and family offices, which is a whole mystery that no one's really worked out. But we did come across a few of them. But the angel groups, trying to get in there. There was so much interest, but a lot of it ended up just being completely wasted time. So I would say it was right to go after the angels, but we did it a bit too late. And it was right to go after we made lots of learnings, basically. And so next time we've got a lot of feet in the door with a lot of VCs who are kind of more for the Series A raise that we'd be doing next year, which will be about 2 million. And so we think that actually, although maybe we did waste a bit of time, in the long run, it won't be wasted.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously your time is valuable, but you are building relationships that you might be able to then, cash in on further down the line. Yeah. And it's all good awareness for the company and the technology.
Yeah, and it's keeping those relationships going, keeping drip feeding some information through to them, and making sure that you're kind of keeping that interest peaked a little bit, so that, and then the timing, that's the other thing. A lot of VCs, the key thing to ask is, do you actually have money at the moment? Are you deploying a fund? Yeah. Because you can waste a lot of time on that. So I would definitely advocate to people, just find that out straight away. And if not, you can have them on the list for next time. But if they're not, then it's just not worth it.
I think that's a great piece of advice. I wonder how many people do that.
Yeah, I hadn't realised that.
Yeah, you kind of assume that they were investing money, but
actually they might be fundraising themselves and actually not deploying the fund.
So you said you tried on lots of different hats. What did you plump for in the end? How do you describe yourselves?
So we would call ourselves climate tech, but also construction tech. The trouble with construction tech is that a lot of people think software. Okay. And I wouldn't have thought that personally, because you think construction, that's pretty solid stuff. Yeah. But actually it transpired, it's more that way. But I think a lot of the construction tech VCs don't go small enough on the ticket size. So there's a bit of a gap there in terms of that, whereas climate tech does. So we're about to sign some legals with Sustainable Ventures. So a climate tech VC, very well regarded, and they have an accelerator program that we'll be doing. So they're leading our round, and then we have some angels following up with that. So that's how we've ended up. But it has been difficult. I would 100% say the last year of fundraising, it's been really hard, and we hear that a lot, which at least kind of makes you feel a bit better that it's taking some time.
How long in kind of elapsed time and numbers of meetings has that taken? Just like for founders that are listening to this and kind of going through that pain themselves.
Let's think. I mean, probably we have applied to, 300 different sources of funding. And some of that was through Sown Capital, but I'd say I probably myself have done at least a third, maybe 2/5 of that. And some of it, actually, I would give another tip that if you are going through another third party, go back direct yourself, because actually I've gone back direct to a lot of them that we applied for through Sown. And then actually when I go direct to somebody specific, then we've had a pitch meeting. So it's worth trying yourself.
In the room, for example, for the Cleantech Venture Day, it's not just investors that we have there. We also have corporates. And sometimes corporates can be, a stronger help for the startups. We've got Allsim, so it's a concrete cement companies from France. They have attended our event every year for the last 5 years. And they come here to learn about new companies, to meet with them, and then maybe pull them to their own accelerators or doing things. So, it's... Yes, you pitch to investors, but you also meet with corporates or with professional services in the room that might help you, maybe not on the day, but maybe 6 months later you will receive an email or a phone call saying, okay, can you participate to that? So all this event, and especially the Cleantech Venture Day, is about raising the profile of the startup and putting them in front of a full community of climate tech people.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So definitely the corporates, we've spoken to people like CRH, Holcim, they have the Maker Ventures, so we've applied for that as well, the CEMEX startup competition. So there's quite a lot that the corporates in definitely in construction world that do, so it's great to get in front of them. And the other event that I saw you at, the Innovate UK, yes, buildings materials one, that there were a lot of great corporates there, and some of whom were our customers, so that was really great as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because we talk to a lot of people on the podcast, and not everyone wants to grow the business. Some are there to have it acquired by a corporate as well. So it's not just supporting them on their innovation journey, there may be that acquisition route as well. So I talked to Pulpatronics separately. They were pitching for pre-seed funding, and this is what they had to say.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm one of the co-founders of Pulpatronics, and I'm also the CEO. Together with my co-founder, Shoma Biro, he is the CTO. So combining our skills in biology, engineering, and design, we innovated in the RFID space.
Before I get to your response on funding, I want to dig a little bit deeper, if we can, please, on Pulpatronics. So I personally am super excited. So some people may know this already, but I was global lead of RFID at IBM when the practice was acquired from PwC. I did that role for 2 years, but I'm going back 20 years here. It was March 2003. So much has changed. And locally, we even have companies like Pervase ID who are doing super active passive RFID tags. But what you're doing is so very different. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. I think RFID tags in general has definitely come a long way. Like you said, it's used from anywhere from like livestock tracking all the way to now most heavily used in the retail industry. So I don't know if you're familiar with going to a fast fashion brand and you can literally just dump all your clothes in the auto checkout process and it just magically scans your item. So it's really, really good at what it does. And it's also really good and important for retailers for their inventory stock counting and accuracy. And that's why everyone's, adopting it more and more. And because there's an uptick in adoption, that also means that there's an uptick of using metals and microchips to create these tags. And because a lot of these products have a really short lifespan, we're actually generating a lot of e-waste. And so Pulpatronics actually tackles that by creating fully paper-based, chipless, and recyclable RFID tags. And so unlike conventional ones that have a metal antenna and a microchip inside these like clothing price tags, ours is completely metal-free and chipless. And so how we do that is we basically use a laser to basically induce a conductive circuit directly from our bespoke paper. So what we're essentially doing is we're turning the carbon ingredient in our paper into a conductive carbon-based material through the laser. And so that's how we eliminate all the metal components. And instead of storing information in the silicon microchip, we're storing information based on the geometric pattern of the antenna design. So it's similar to how QR codes store information through the visual pattern, but because ours is a conductive circuit, we're actually able to use it as an RFID tag as well. So in terms of, the sustainability benefits of this, our tags can cut CO2 emissions by 70%. And because we're not using more components, we're reducing and eliminating them, we're actually simplifying the entire manufacturing process, streamlining it. And the end product is simply just paper. We can throw it back into paper production. So because we're reducing a lot of these steps and processes, we can also bring the cost down for these tags by 2 times, which we think can not only help businesses save more, we can also preserve more of the world's resources, but we can also increase item level tracking across new products as well as more industries so that more people can benefit from getting more accurate like stock inventory counting or even traceability data. So we see this as something that is good for the planet as well as good for technology advancement.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think that you've got a huge tick for the sustainability box, but it's also another huge tick for accessibility. Like you say, more industries can use it. And then the key thing, which was always the issue right at the start, was affordability. So all of those things coming together is kind of the perfect mix. Your funding journey, I think, is going to be an interesting one because, again, this is not a net new market. So you're not, you're doing the evolution and progress of an established market. So we talked, obviously, to Sarah about her journey. And as I've mentioned, you were looking at pre-seed level. So how has it been for you?
Yeah, we've been actually very lucky, I would say. We've started our fundraising journey maybe 3 months ago, and we're literally about to close literally any day. So we're raising around 400K in our pre-seed round. And actually during our journey, we secured 70% of that within 3 weeks. And so I think we were able to get a lot of inbound interest from just previous exposures. We won a series of different awards in design as well as engineering. And so through that came a lot of, article features. And so we've been lucky enough that I think with the right connections and the right people, they do see kind of this big market and the big vision we're trying to achieve. And so we've been lucky enough to just quite easily secure our funding. We've also been part of various incubator programs and investor readiness programs, which I think has also allowed us to be able to reach different and more, relevant investors really quickly. And I think that has also just really helped.
Yeah, that's fantastic news for you. And it's, you are still early stage. So having access to that capital allows you to get on with doing the job as well, doesn't it? But does that open up other opportunities for you for collaborations and partnerships? Are you looking for that now?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, again, from some of these features, article features, we've been getting a lot of inbound requests to just chat and see how we can collaborate. So we do have a few kind of pilots with major kind of retailers and brands lined up for next year. But, we're constantly looking for more pilots, more partnerships, more ways to just continue the conversation to see how we can, innovate in this RFID space to really increase the adoption of this technology more.
We will definitely be following your progress. So Sylvie, just my last question on this. How many, over the 7 years you've had so many companies going through, how many of those companies do you think have got funding or have got that important corporate connection?
Quite a few, but it's always difficult to track down. But what I can say is I'll give you some example from Cambridge-based example. So for example, Zedify, they pitched twice at our Cleantech Venture Day, and they now have received investment from Barclays. We had Arex, this is a company from London, based in London. She came 3 years ago now, and it's a company to watch in the construction sector too. From Cambridge, we also had Fleet. Yep. I don't know. Yes.
They've been on the podcast.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, no, they're coming on the podcast. Sorry, they haven't been on yet.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was my first Cleantech Venture Day, and I always remember him coming with his bike and on stage and unfolding it and demonstrating. And to see, especially for a Cambridge-based company, to see them after not every day, but you bump into them, you can see their journey and how they are. So we offer them a platform, and some will receive direct investment from the day, and some will be later on. As Sarah said, it's important because you also have to be seen by people you want to meet in 6 months, a year, 2 years' times. So the more you're visible, the better it is for you.
Another factor actually is kind of meeting some of the other startups because there's quite a lot of potential collaboration as well. So we would love to collaborate in future with a lot of these materials startups who are doing the low carbon cementitious materials that can be put into concrete instead of classic Portland cement. And the reason that we're not using low carbon materials at the moment is simply that there aren't enough of them. The supply chain hasn't adjusted. And also when you are pitching to construction companies, they are extremely risk averse. So you need to make everything as familiar as possible, except for the one innovation that you provide. So, there's a company called Material Evolution that we have met a few times, and they've said they're doing the same with their product in terms of they do a kind of cementitious replacement material, but they still put some GGBS, which is kind of another low carbon familiar material, in there, just so that the companies are like, okay, I recognise this. This is more familiar. It's difficult in the world of construction. It's a difficult kind of chasm to get over to get people to take a risk on you. So keeping everything familiar is super important, but lovely and fantastic always to meet as many of the different startups as possible. And there's so many potential future collaborations, and we'd like to be able to use that to get our product down to true net zero. So at the moment we can save up to 70% of embodied carbon and up to 35% of supply cost. Now, the construction companies like the cost side of things, probably more than they do the carbon. But once we can use those low carbon materials, we can really get it down to zero, but we can make it cost less than it would otherwise.
Compelling. So, Sylvie, maybe we can just kind of maybe go up to the 30,000 foot level and talk about the kind of clean tech landscape in general. You've been there 5 years at Cambridge Cleantech, and the organisation's been around for longer than that. So, Have you seen things change over that time? How have things come into vogue and then gone out of vogue? You mentioned the kind of EV charging being very popular a few years ago. So what does that overall landscape look like, and what are the challenges and opportunities that you see?
The landscape is changing. There was quite a dip in terms of investment 2 years ago. And on the day, for example, we had Bloomberg, ENF, and also KPMG. The event was hosted at KPMG in Canary Wharf. They both presenting report about the cleantech sector. The company who pitched 6 months ago, it was harder than the one we are pitching now. I think it's pinkier in terms of the future, but it's still a low investment compared to 2 years ago. What we see, however, is that the cleantech renewable energy sector is growing, followed by the building tech, and that's a good way of being hopeful. However, we have not yet reached the number of investment we require to achieve a net zero on sometimes. So, for example, at the moment, the investment in the cleantech sector is around $1 trillion. To achieve net zero by 2050, it's a $200 trillion that you need to have.
Say that number again. My brain can't get.
Yeah, me neither. So that's why, and I have to say it.
200 trillion.
So and it's more than already.
Wow.
Yes.
So how do we close that gap?
Well, we need the investors, but we also need governments. And I think, it's been quite unsettled this year when you think that you had 70 countries going through elections. So half of the world is voting this year. So that's unsettling in terms of the market, in terms of the investment. I remember on our pitching training day, there was an investor in the room, and there was a day where the Labour government was going through their manifesto. So it was reading closely, going to have an impact on the investment and so on. Luckily, he was happy. But yeah, it's not just a startup, a solution, and some money on one side. Is in terms of policies, where are we going locally, nationally, and in the world. So it's quite a lot of challenges. We all have to carry on, and we all have to be providing a stage for the startups and providing the right community and the right environment for them to grow and scale. However, there is another challenge, and on the day we had Daniel Sivezic from the World Fund. It's a European fund. They raised 300 million to be able to go into startups. And what he's focusing on, it's the gap between Series A and B, because you have a lot of startups who can manage up to Series A, but then there is a big gap on funding. So how we enable them to go over that gap, build that bridge of investment, not only from an investor community point of view, but also from the corporates and the right policies to enable achieving a net zero.
And World Fund has quite huge, carbon emissions targets for each of the startups they invest in, doesn't it? Yeah, so they have pretty chunky targets for. So you've got to be doing some serious reductions. Yeah.
So I guess a supplementary question then off the back of that, I guess a two-part question. Is the number of startups that you're seeing in the clean tech sector growing with the situation we find ourselves in, that kind of demand to change the trajectory the planet's going on? Are you seeing that kind of growth? And then the second part of the question is, are we really in danger of missing out on some game-changing innovation because that funding just isn't there? Back to your point, Sarah, about timing is everything. Are we missing opportunities to make significant progress?
So on the startup point of view, I think, if you're an innovator and you have an idea and you can prove that it's something that is good for the planet and has an impact on carbon reductions, you should go for it. And it's also for the innovators to say, okay, I'm trying to do that. Is it just a solution that is commercially viable, or is it a solution that is commercially viable and has an impact? And if you can have both, the better it is, because then you can really pitch to investors. On the other hand, we also have corporates and investors who are more and more, and family offices, 3 or 4 generations. So the young people now are saying to the family, actually, we've been investing in so and so, but we don't want that anymore. Let's invest wisely for the planet. So you have a shift, not only from the investors' point of view, but from the innovation point of view. And then it's how we can help them to survive. And yes, they provide some very good innovation that will never grow. And it's not because the founder is bad, it's just the right circumstances. And part of it is luck, luck. And it's how, if you fit everything, then it works. And sometimes it doesn't. But it's very hard.
I would say that I feel like we probably won't miss out on key innovations. There will be some way it gets there to market, because someone might just buy a patent, or someone might if they went into administration or something like that, but it's just everything's going too slowly. So everything's taking too long, the fundraising process takes too long because there's not enough investment out there and everyone's too risk averse and all of that side of things. But there are more and more. I've definitely seen, even in the few months that I've been doing it, more and more kind of climate tech funds being launched. And from VCs who haven't done climate tech before, clean tech before, are coming into it. Family offices are coming into it. So there's definitely more coming, but everyone needs to be a bit bolder. And the whole thing just needs to be a lot smoother for the founders, because it's just taking too long. And then everyone's slowed down in doing the job that they're meant to be doing. Yeah.
So everybody has to, shift their mind, and maybe it's less. You still have to do due diligence, but maybe we have to make it quicker. For example, we had young volunteers on the day, so 20 something, and they were listening to the startups and talking to people, and the feedback I had after is that it's all good, but it will take 20 and 30 years. Can we wait? Can we not make it quicker, because the planet is not going to wait. So let's roll up our sleeves, please.
Well, there's a good call to arms, smoother and faster, which nicely segues me onto the last question for you, Sylvie, which is about the Climate Tech Supercluster.
Yeah, the day on the 2nd of July at KPMG was slightly different. As I said earlier, we always try to improve, not only at Cambridge Cleantech, but for the event itself. So Cambridge Cleantech, 13 years here in Cambridge, our sister organization in Oxford, 5 years, Oxford Green Tech. We also have linked with London. So we started to develop not only over the green triangle or the gold triangle, depending on how you want to call it, but also to look further. We used to be quite involved on the European projects. So we've linked with enough of France, Belgium, Holland, and so on. And we don't want to lose these links. There is also quite a lot of innovation in the north of England. The climate tech, clean tech sector is not focused just on Cambridge or Oxford or London. In order to attract mass of innovators, you have to go broader than that. You have to go 4 hours by train from London, so that's the north of England, even Scotland, but also Europe. And then you develop the Climate Tech Supercluster. And that's what we've been doing at Cambridge Cleantech, is being co-founding that idea that together we are stronger, and is how we accelerate the innovation. So on the day, on the 2nd of July, we had a showcase from the Climate Tech Superclusters with companies having a stand and show what the ecosystem is about and create that conversation, but also making sure that we have other opportunities. So the Cleantech Venture Day we had here now in London for 7 years, we'll go to Amsterdam and we'll go to Paris over the next year. And that's quite exciting.
Are you seeing any sort of like specializations in these geographical clusters, or just a generalization of working on everything everywhere?
So it's clean tech focus, but then it depends on our partners. For example, in Amsterdam, we have someone in the mobility sector. So I'm just at the moment creating the program, but it might be more focused on 2 different areas. So it could be mobility and something else. And then for Paris, we have EDF on board. So it might be more energy focused or something like that. It's not to repeat the exact things that we're doing in London. We have to also listen to the local market and what people want to see over there.
Interesting.
Great. So watch this space. I'm sure we'll be following you and finding out updates as they come across. Thank you so much, Sylvie and Sarah, for coming in and talking to us today, and Chloe for talking to us online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It will really help others discover the show.
If you are a startup looking to grow in Cambridge, the Bradfield Centre offers a range of flexible membership packages which put you in control of your office and home working mix. There's a vibrant, collaborative atmosphere, on-site cafe, plenty of green outside space, and regular member social events. For more information, visit bradfieldcentre.com or call 01223 919 600.